welcome to Web of Stories. This is take 2 because I just realized I wasn't recording. Basically what happened was the cat came at one point and like knocked the tripod over, and it's fixing it. I had like turned off the recording, so I had been talking. Well, that was good. So we're gonna try this again. My name is Melinda. Welcome to Web of Stories. Normally, or in the past, I have had a weekly vlog that I share here. I do not have a weekly vlog for this week. In my area, the Pacific Northwest, the Portland metro area, we were about 1 degree cooler than the surface of the sun this week. Our utility had asked us to like shift our energy to save energy because they were worried about brownouts and blackouts and the grid. So it was just one of those weeks. That's fine. But you know what? It kind of felt nice not having to worry about doing a vlog entry. So I think that the vlogs may become the exception and not the rule in the future, just to let you know. But I am here with my wrap up. One good thing about having to turn off all your power, all your unnecessary power for several hours in the day, is that if you've charged your e-reader, you can still read in the dark and in my darkened bedroom. So I got a lot of reading done. I did finish 6 books this week, and that's pretty good. I will say a lot of it is just that I had a lot of books that were in progress and they just happened to finish this week. It's not like I pushed through a lot of new books, but let me go through those. One thing I am going to change is I normally start with the first book I finished to the most recent book I finished. I'm going to take 2 out and start with them because these 2 books are birds of a feather. They're very much, if you like one, you're going to like the other. There's a lot of similarities between the 2, and I really enjoyed both of them. I gave them both A's. The first one is actually the second book in, I think is going to be a duology, The Elderly Lady duology by Helene Tursten. And this one is called An Elderly Woman Must Not Be Crossed. So the first book is called, I believe it is called An Elderly Woman is Up to No Good. I'm going to put the correct title down here if I am wrong. So this is about Maud, who is a late 80s Swedish woman who is a serial killer. She's not a serial killer in that she has a compulsion to kill, that she has some like deep-seated need that killing people feeds or anything like that. She's pragmatic. If there is a problem and you can fix this problem by knocking someone off, she has no qualms about knocking someone off because she doesn't have time for this. So the first book was a lot of the different stories, incidents that she had. The second book, which came out about a year ago, and I tried to listen to it. I listened to the first one. I tried to listen to it when it came out, and I got the audiobook out of my library and I started listening to it, and I was like, I remember the concrete dildos from the first book. And I realized that even though it said it was the second book, it was actually the first book. It might be that the second book was after. I don't know what was going on with it. But anyway, I decided at that point I wasn't going to listen to it. But then when Book Bingo came about, I had to read a book about an older protagonist. So I decided I would read this one. And I'm glad I did. It works very well. I suppose it would work well in audio. The first one worked well in audio, but it also worked well in print. This one's a little different. So Maud, our serial killer protagonist, she's 89 years old and she's going on a holiday, and she kind of knows this may be the last holiday she takes. She is very in great shape for 89 years old, although she will play up the little old lady part if it suits her. But she also knows she's 89 years old. And so she's going to go over the Christmas and New Year holidays. She's going to go to South Africa, which is one of her favorite places. She's been there before. So the first part of the book is like the first book. There are short intertwined short stories of some incidences. Now, in this case, it's her kind of thinking about them as she is flying to South Africa. So these are earlier incidences than the first book. The second part of the book is her in South Africa, and it's told more like a story. There are deaths. There's still that, but I really like that because we really got to know her more as a character and see the goodness in the serial killer. I really liked it. It did end in a way that I feel like this series is over. I don't know for sure, but I felt like this series is over. So I really enjoyed it. I think that they're both really short, so you could do them both. You could get that audiobook I got that has the whole thing apparently and just listen to it, and it would probably be like 5 hours. But again, those are the Elderly Lady books by Helene, Tursten, and they are translated from the Swedish. Both these books are actually books in translation, which works well for Women in Translation Month, but that's not why I was reading them. The second book is the first Prehistoric Serial Killer and Other Stories by Teresa Solana. And this is translated from the Catalan. I am not sure who the translate. I will actually put the translators in the down below when I list the books. So short stories. These stories are very much in the same spirit as the Elderly Lady books. In fact, there is a short story in here that is like the Spanish elderly lady who kills people. These are quirky and unique and humorous in a lot of ways. Short stories. I really enjoyed these. They are a lot of fun to get through. I found them delightful. And actually, I think I said I gave these both these books A's. I think I gave this one an A+, which is unusual for me with a short story. So this was a lot of fun. It was a really quick read, and it is very much in the vein of the Elderly Lady books. So if you want something like that, these are great books to read together. Now, I read this because it's part of the Women's World Cup readathon. I picked it up when Zambia, which was my team, lost to Spain. I started reading it, and then Spain became my team. At one point, Spain was playing Sweden, and I hadn't planned this, but that's when I was reading the Elderly Lady book. So I was set if Spain lost, but Spain won. So it was fine. In 24 hours from when I'm filming this, I will know if my next Agatha Christie read will be for the Women's World Cup readathon or not. I'm hoping it is because I'm rooting for the Lionesses. So those were pretty fun books. Okay, the rest of the books I read. The third book, which was actually the first book I read, is The Raging Storm by Anne Cleeves, which is the third book in the Two Rivers series, also sometimes called the Matthew Venn series. I'm not going to talk a lot about this. This was a NetGalley book, and it comes out on September 5th. Normally, I do a video review, and that's still kind of happening, a video review to release the day before, so September 4th. But I have like 5 NetGalley titles that release that day. So what I did was I did record a video review of this, and I'm going to kind of do it blog style of the books that I finish in time for that. So I will put a review out, and it will be with some other reviews on September 4th. I gave it an A. I enjoyed it, if you need to know what's happening there. Then the second book I finished was Secure Your Own Mask by Shaindel Beers, which is a book of poetry that I read for my bingo card. Shaindel Beers is an Oregon poet. The poetry was lovely. It was hard to read because a lot of it was about domestic violence, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was well worth the read. I gave it an A, which is generally what I give poetry collections because I just feel weird about judging it. It's fine. I mean, it's so personal. I don't feel I can judge it, but I gave it an A. Then, the third book I finished, and this is where I'm going to kind of go against the grain a bit, was All Systems Red by Martha Wells, which is the first in the Murderbot series, which I read because I needed to read something about a non-human. And I know people love this book. I mean, this was recommended to me with great raves. I would love it. I listened to it, which I heard is a good way to do it. But it just felt like I've heard that story so many times before. It did not seem original at all to me. And I gave it a C, but I know other people love it. So your mileage may vary. It was not a book for me, but I read it. I can say I've read it. I don't need to read further in the series. And I finished that bingo square. And then I read An Elderly Woman Must Be Crossed. The last book I read was the first Prehistoric Serial Killer. And between those two, I finished Babel. I call it Babel. You call it Babel. Tomato, whatever. By R.F. Kuang, or I guess she's now going by Rebecca Kuang, or Rebecca F. Kuang. I'm going to say R.F. Kuang. Actually, I'm going to say Kuang. Let's face it. I am going to talk a little bit about this one because I did not do a full review about it, but I do have thoughts. I'm going to start out by saying that I like this book. Also, when I decide what grade to give a book, there's different ways I go about it. And one way is this. This book came very, very highly recommended to me by people I know whose opinions usually match mine very well and whose opinions I trust. Very high, like 5 stars for all of them. So I went into this thinking this would be an A+ book. I don't do book predictions, but this one was an A+ prediction. And then from there, I could only work down. So I did really like this book. It is dark academia. It is a little bit fantasy. I will say I didn't quite understand the magic system here, but that's okay. I just went with it. That's not a detriment to the book. I personally didn't really care about the mechanics of it. Other people might, I didn't. About a boy who adopts the name of Robin. He's from Canton, China. He's brought by an Englishman to England where he is raised. The man who brings him is a translation professor at this organization called Babel in Oxford, where they translate things, which goes into the magic system, which makes silver powerful, and silver runs the world. And so Robin grows up old enough to go to Oxford, where he meets other people and has a found family, and plot ensues. My first impression of this was that this is like a book for people who've outgrown Harry Potter, because it did give me a lot of Harry Potter feels. You are in sort of a magical school. This is a little more reality based than Harry Potter, but you're in a magical school. There is a found family element. There's also this sort of evil thing that becomes more powerful as the story goes on. It's not really a person in this case, it's more of an idea. This is a metaphor or an allegory or whatever the correct term is for colonialism. So it's colonialism. So I really like that. And the writing is beautiful. It also reminded me of something else later in the book, but that would be a spoiler, so I'm not going to mention it. But I had 2 really big issues with this book. The first is this book comes in, my copy comes in at 542 pages. The writing is beautiful, and there's a lot of it. I think that there should have been stronger editing with this book. There's not any chunks that I think could be taken out. I just think in general, this needed to have been pruned a bit. My theory on editing is that a strong editor is not going to make a bad writer better, but a weak editor can make a strong writer not as good. And I think that's the case that happened here. It just needed a stronger editing hand. It did not need to be as long as it was. Secondly, I am not against footnotes in novels, but I think they are very tricky to do, and I do not feel that Kuang succeeded. There are a lot of footnotes in this book. They don't, in my opinion, add anything. In fact, they are a distraction. I gave up reading them pretty early on when I realized they aren't adding anything to them. And then I just became very resentful that they were there, because I think what she tried to do was kind of make this seem like an academic paper almost. This does say the subtitle is an arcane history, so I think she wanted it more of like a record. But then the rest of the book isn't written like that. So it did not work for me, and I did come very quickly to resent the presence of the footnotes. I wish they were not there. They could be taken out completely, will not change anything. So because of those, I would say both of those are worth like half a star, which brought this down from an A+ to a B+. Still highly recommend it. Still really enjoyed it. Still think it's a great book, but a B+ because there are those 2 issues. And the last book I finished was the first Prehistoric serial killer. So that's what I read this week. Currently, I have 5 books going. So the first book is Western Lane by Chetna Maroo. I may have called this Western Avenue because in the town over, there is a Western Avenue and it was stuck in my head. I'm like that far. It's not a very big book so far. Lovely writing, very evocative of feelings, great characterization. Probably not for you if you want plot in your books, because there doesn't seem to be much here. I'm actually fine with that. I would prefer a book with no plot than a book with a weak plot. So I'm doing okay with it, but I know a lot of people would not like that. But it is very lovely writing, and also very short, 150 pages of story text. And then for my library book club, still working on Daughters of the Flower Fragrant Garden, Two Sisters Separated by China's Civil War. And can I tell you how hard it is to remind myself to say Daughters of the Flower Fragrant Garden, because that doesn't make any sense to me. But that's by Zhuqing. This is nonfiction. It is a biography of two of her aunts who were separated. You hear the thundering, and it's my son coming down the stairs. I'm reading it very slowly. You're going to see it again next week because it's taken a while. Just because it's not my priority book, it's for book club. And then I have 2 ebooks going, and the first one was a little bit of a surprise. This is a book that I had heard great reviews of and was really excited to read, and I put it on hold through Libby, and it said like 16-week wait. And then it was one of those cases where it said 16-week wait, and then the next hour my library hold was in. So I was not expecting to read it now. It's a book of women in translation, so that works out well. Sorry. My son is being loud again. It is surprisingly a World War II novel that I am willing to read and enjoying. And I am actually going to do a video about that in the near future about World War II novels, because I am kind of on the camp of not wanting to read them, but I have some exceptions and why they're exceptions. But this is the Postcard by Berest, translated from the French. Again, the translator will be down below. I have this on ebook, so I can't easily look it up. This is the story of, there's a family, modern-ish day, and they get a postcard in the mail, a French family, and on the back are 4 names. And the names are the grandparents and the aunt and the uncle of the mother of this family, and those 4 people died in the Holocaust. And no one knows who sent this postcard. No one knows why the postcard was sent. And it's a little bit of a mystery. I don't know if they ever find out who sent it, because I've not gotten to that part yet. But the sort of narrator of this story, kind of wonders about it. And then a little bit later, the premise is that she's pregnant and she's put on bed rest. So she goes to stay with her parents, so they can wait on her hand and foot. So she asks her mother about these people, and her mother starts recounting the story. And that's where I am. I'm really enjoying it, even though it's World War II fiction. But I will explain, actually, when I do that review, why I'm enjoying it, even though it's World War II historical fiction. Because there is actually a really good reason for that. But this is living up to the hype for me so far. And that is the Postcard by Berest. The second book I've got going on ebook is another one of my September 5th e-galleys, and that's Imperfect Lives by C.J. Washington. About halfway into it, so I'm not going to say much about it. So yeah, it's going pretty quickly. So I think I've done The Raging Storm. This one will be done. I think there's 2 or 3 others after this. I should get at least 1 more done before that, so we'll see. And then finally, this is my audiobook. I have 1 square left, and it is funny. And I was like, what am I going to do for funny? And then I looked through my Libro queue, and I had a book called The World Record Book of Racist Stories by Amber Ruffin and Lacey Lamar. And this is the follow-up to You'll Never Believe What Happened to Lacey by these 2. Amber Ruffin is a comedian and a writer. She is not currently because they're on strike, but on the staff, a staff writer for, and has her own little kind of extra show, staff writer for the Late Night with Seth Meyers. She's very funny. And then Lacey Lamar is her sister. And the first book, they told things that happened to Lacey. This one, they just sort of expand their scope a bit as things that happen to their family and friends. I mean, it should not be funny. Racism is not funny, but this is a comedian and her sister who very much plays up the comedian part of it. So it is funny. I mean, it's intentionally funny, but it's also really horrifying. Very much like the first book. I'm enjoying it. I have 2 hours left. My kids are like, finish that book, Mom, because as soon as I finish it, we can take my bingo card down to Pal's, which means after we're done at Pal's, we go get ice cream, which is what they really want, is ice cream. So I will have that one done sooner, very soon, or else my kids will let me know that I'm in trouble. So anyway, that was my week. I hope I remembered everything. My last one, I totally forgot half the books and I had to do an editing thing. So I'm hoping I have everything. I'm hoping that the second take is not too frazzled. But yeah, so that's what's going on in my life. I am going to stop this now so I stay below 20 minutes and so that my son can make noise in the kitchen. If you made it this far, please give me a thumbs up and let me know by putting a cat in the, I don't care what kind of cat, any kind of cat you want, cat emoji in the comments, or you can just write kitty cat, so I'll know. And then if you have not yet subscribed to my channel, please do. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye.